only person's emotions that I get to be in control of are my own. And that when somebody else is upset with what I have to say, I get to love them, but I am not responsible for them. And that their programming, their coping, their perception of the situation is theirs. And I got to just tell you guys that all of a sudden I felt like I had the weight of the world lifted from my shoulders.
Welcome to the Spiral Up podcast. I'm your host, Dr. LaChelle Wieme, a peak performance coach and business strategist dedicated to helping you see what's possible within you, the blind spots that are holding you back, and the solutions to ensure success and fulfillment without the hustle. I use my secret sauce of metaphysics, brain science, and scripture to work with God to manifest your ideal life and business. If you're ready to create massive forward momentum in your business and bust through the blocks that drag you down, join me on the Spiral Up journey and create the clarity, confidence, and consistency to become the CEO that lives your life by design. It's time to create the sustainable impact, income, and time freedom you desire faster. Now is the time to spiral up.
Hey friends, welcome back to the Spiral Up podcast. I'm your host, Dr. LaChelle Wieme, and today I want to take you down some of my own kind of shedding process that I had to undergo in the year of the snake in order to really fully step into this beautiful, momentous year of the fire horse, right? And I'm just going to tell you that 2025 was a big year of me intentionally choosing to face and release things that I knew had been holding me back. And I think that a lot of us, especially as business owners, recognize that there are a lot of things that we know we want to do and we feel like we should do them, but for whatever reason, we just can't get ourselves to do them. And I think that a lot of times what I see with business owners that I coach is that we get to these pressure points in our business where it's like we could take ourselves to the next level, but we hesitate, we shrink down, we hold back because of literally something that's been running the puppet show in the background this entire time, our whole lives, right? And I feel like one of the things that has made me the coach that I am is because I understand what it's like to have to go through some of this crap, and I can walk alongside of you, maybe just a step or two ahead. And this last bit of 2025 really allowed for me to find a giant revelation really into a predominant puppet string, I guess, that had been running in the background my entire life. And once I was able to see it, I couldn't unsee it. And it really allowed for me to acknowledge and shed and shift in a way that has literally changed everything since it happened a couple months ago. So let me get down into it. First off, I'm just going to give you guys an idea of how this process happened with me so that maybe you can allow yourself to be like, oh, okay, it doesn't have to be so big and traumatic, right? It literally just allows for ourselves to, number one, set the intention. I'm like, God, show me the things that I need to acknowledge and heal in order for me to go into the next season. So asking that question sets the intention. It creates the invitation for the things, right? Now, when we do that, we have to be willing to say, oh gosh, this might be uncomfortable. This might be scary. This might be hard. I might have to face some things that I don't want to face. So we have to allow ourselves to acknowledge any resistance and allow that to try to let that go as well. All right. So setting the intention, asking for the guidance, and then being open and willing to be able to receive the little nuggets, the breadcrumbs that are continuing to come into our awareness as we see that, so that we can lean into each one as it comes. It doesn't necessarily have to be this giant Mack truck that hits you over the side of the head. It could just be like little tiny things that start to reveal itself. And so that's really what happened to me. I had recognized that I had a lot of what I would say crucial conversations at the end of last year. And conversations like that are really hard for me. I believe very much in having open dialogue so that we can move past things, especially when somebody or something is important to me. Even though it's hard for me to have hard conversations, I know that I need to do them. So just because I do it doesn't mean it's easy, but I was finding myself having more and more resistance to having what I would call difficult conversations, hard conversations. And I was like, okay, why is this showing up? So I think that intention was set that I wanted to release some things. The second thing was the awareness. Oh my gosh, I see this pattern of over and over again having to face essentially conversations that were like making me want to just run the other direction, right? But it's okay, here we go. And these were conversations with people that I just truly cared about. And I knew that they needed to be happening because I cared about them enough to have the conversation, but it was just really hard. So I started to recognize the pattern, and I'm like, okay, isn't this interesting? There's a pattern here that every single time that one of these conversations comes up, I literally get this like gross knot in my stomach. Like I just want to run the other direction. What's that about? I would love to be able to have conversations confidently and easily so that I can continue to move myself and others forward. And I recognize that as a leader, as a CEO, as somebody who's building a bigger business and influencing more things and more people, I needed to be able to embody the identity of the person who can show up in those places with grace and confidence and empathy, but also just knowing that it's going to be the conversation that's going to be easy and fruitful, right? So I wanted that identity, but for whatever reason, every time I had that opportunity to have those conversations, I like clinched up a little bit. And so because I was open, I saw the pattern and I was open to start seeing, okay, where are the breadcrumbs that are taking me to the underlying root? And I believe very much that we can band-aid solutions onto things. But once we get to the actual root of what's going on, that's when we can actually pluck the root out and replace it with the seed of God's truth. And so I wanted to know where the roots were in this place. And what was cool, and this is again where it doesn't have to be this like giant like bulldozer, guys. It's just tiny little nuggets. They're like, oh my gosh, that's literally the answer to what I was asking. And so I happened to be on Instagram and I was scrolling and I saw this Instagram reel about, it was a Carl Jung post about empathetic people who feel like they are holding on or responsible for the emotions of everybody else. And it was like that moment where I recognized that put words into what I was feeling. And the reason that I was having such a hard time having these heavy conversations is because I felt responsible for the emotions of the person on the other side of that conversation. So if I made you sad, or I made you mad, or I made you angry, or I made you not want to like me anymore, or I made you whatever, it was too much pressure. It felt so heavy that I couldn't get myself to do it or to do it easily. And then I would have the conversation and it's awkward. And I had to acknowledge, holy crap, like this is the thing. I am struggling because I feel responsible for the other people's emotions. And I started to recognize that, okay, that's definitely a theme, but how do I get rid of that? And that's when my rabbit hole curiosity, the breadcrumbs that God gives us, allowed to take me to where I needed to go next. So I was fascinated by that conversation. It was like a 1-minute reel that led me to going to YouTube and saying, okay, I'm curious more about Carl Jung's empathetic work that he's done because I'm definitely an empath. And then all of a sudden, the video that came up next was something around the shadow work of the mother in empathetic women. And I was like, okay, interesting. Like interesting. I don't know why, but I'm interested. This is being drawing it to me. And I started to recognize that, yeah, I definitely could see that there were some patterns that my mom, I love her so much, but there were patterns that my mom had unresolved that I had essentially taken on into my own psyche. And all of this happened around the holidays, right? So I'm back home and I'm spending more time with my family and I'm watching things unfold. I'm watching interactions between my family, my sister, my mom, my dad, all the things. And I'm starting to all of a sudden have some aha moments. I'm like, okay, interesting. All of a sudden, I took myself back to being 2 years old and recognizing that my mom had big emotions. And as an adult, I can look back and say, and my grandma had big emotions, right? So, like, you knew when they were upset. And it was like, very obvious, loud, yeah, I'm upset. And that pattern was passed down from my grandma to my mom. And when I was little, my mom would love her to death, you guys, but she would fly off the handle a little bit, just like in her emotions were really big. I realized that as a little girl, without even realizing it, I had tried to essentially hold her emotions for her. The way in which she behaved and the way in which I behaved were intertwined. And so if I could read her, then I could behave this way and then she would react this way. And so my empathy actually became a trauma response of being somebody in order to help control the emotions of somebody else that was completely out of my control, right? But my tiny little brain didn't understand that. And so I became empathetic in order to read people and read people's emotions in order to protect myself. And it was like this acknowledgement, like, holy crap, this isn't mine. And once I was able to acknowledge that this isn't mine, I was able to then take my perception now as an adult and still help to heal this little girl. And so what I ended up doing is imagining myself as that little girl, that 2-year-old little girl, and telling her that she is not responsible for mom's emotions, that she just gets to be herself. And I was able to hold my 2-year-old self as an adult, as a informed, healed part of me. I got to thank the experience for the empathy that I have, because I definitely am good at reading people's emotions, but I don't have to allow it to be triggered by pain or allowing myself to feel like I have to read other people in order to be safe myself. That I get to use it as a superpower for their healing and my connection, but it's not out of responsibility for another human being, that I get to be responsible to somebody, not for somebody. And this moment where I was able to have this little tiny conversation with myself as a little girl, and to hold myself and to allow myself to feel safe and to recognize patterns as an adult, that my dad was really good at just like being overwhelmed with all of this emotion. So he would just leave, and he'd be gone for several hours. So I would find myself in a pattern of trying to control other people and their emotions, because either they're going to leave or they're going to blow up. And I don't have to do that anymore. And that the only person's emotions that I get to be in control of are my own. And that when somebody else is upset with what I have to say, I get to love them, but I am not responsible for them. And that their programming, their coping, their perception of the situation is theirs. And I got to just tell you guys that all of a sudden I felt like I had the weight of the world lifted from my shoulders. You wouldn't think that this would be something that was so instrumental, but for me it was, because here's the deal. We have these puppet strings that are playing in the background, like so innocently, like me as a little girl observing my parents and basically adapting with this perception, this belief that I am actually in control of somebody else's emotions, that I can hold them and I'm responsible for them. And what that did was it took me into people pleasing over years, because if I just pleased them, then I wouldn't have to hold the heaviness of them being disappointed in me. It fed into my just fear of rejection, right? So if I just do what the other person needs me to do, then they're going to like me. Therefore, I'm not going to be alone, right? And I won't be abandoned. But it led into ways there in my business and in my family. I was not very good at holding boundaries. So if a client wanted to spend an hour and a half with me instead of an hour, I don't want to make you upset with me. So I'm just going to just continue to do it without any regard to my own like life, my own boundaries, my own rates, my own whatever, because I didn't want to upset the apple cart, right? If somebody was like, hey, can I just pay you this? Or can you just do this for free? Or can you do this project for me? And not being able to say no, because I was afraid of the heaviness of their emotions if they became upset with me. And I would catastrophize things as far as, if I say no, then they're not going to like me anymore. And then this and this is going to happen, which is none of that will happen. Right. And so the moment that I was able to acknowledge that root and recognize the way in which that root was showing up over and over again in my business, I was able to not only shift that for my own well-being personally and professionally, but I was able to see the ways in which I had been operating and have adapted over the last several years as I've grown to compensate for that. And I could see it. I could see how I had shifted. But once I was able to get to that root, how everything was literally just shifted completely, if that makes any sense. And so I find that there is a really big gap between who we want to be at the top of the success and the business that we want and the life that we want, and who be when we are under pressure or when we are allowing the decisions that have to be made to be impacted by those puppet springs that are running around in the back of my subconscious and my emotions and my body. And when we are able to recognize the gap and recognize where those puppet strings are actually running and how to get to the root of those, everything is going to start to shift. And so most of the time, I see that people don't need another strategy. They don't need another 10x your business masterclass. They don't need more social media training. They need to figure out where the gap is between where they're being under pressure and where they want to be, and what are the puppet strings that are running in the background that are creating that, both inside of their mind as well as inside of their body. And once you can identify that, things start to shift. And so, guys, like, it's also, I want to acknowledge the fact that I've done a lot of work on myself, and I'm still seeing things that are continuing to come up, because why? I'm intentional about it. I want to understand what's been holding me back, how I can shift that stuff. And so I want you to know that there is no such thing as perfection. There is no such thing as the end of the journey. Enlightenment is dimensions away, right? And that this beautiful journey in this lifetime is for us to be able to recognize the patterns of this world, recognize those limiting beliefs that are holding us back, and to remember who we are in our divine, beautiful self, that who God created us to be as we were born into this world, and to allow ourselves to be able to experience the fullest expression of that. And as we do that, as we spiral up, as we level up, as we continue to make bigger impact, bigger income, bigger everything, you're still going to bump up against old patterns. And the difference is that you're going to see them faster. You're going to shift them faster because of the tools you've acquired the last time that you saw them. And so I want you to know that none of you are broken, that there's no part of anything that you're going through that I would say you're not cut out for this. Let's just identify, okay, where are some of the patterns? Where are some of the puppet strings that are playing in the background? And once we know better, we can do better. And so how can we identify these things and identify the patterns that are underneath, that are playing the role of the puppet master and preventing us from being able to step up into that version of who we want to be? And I wanted to say that you're not alone in this journey, that if you find yourself like, gosh, I don't know why I want to do this, but I can't get myself to do it. Again, there's nothing wrong with you. It's just a matter of identifying maybe where these little puppet strings are running the show. And once we identify them, we can shift them and things will start to fall into place. So I hope this helps. Now, one of the things that I have been doing is I've opening my calendar to a few people each month for a align and growth consultation, which literally allows me to identify your gaps. Where are you misaligned in the version that you want to be versus where you show up under pressure? And I can identify those patterns for you very quickly and give you some tips on what you can do to shift that. And so if that is you, if you're very curious, I guess, as far as like, where are my gaps? Like, where are my puppet strings? I would absolutely love to have that one-on-one conversation with you. Like I said, I have openings for a few every single month. I would love for you to take one of those, and let's get through this together, shall we? All right, you guys, I hope you had a great day, and I look forward to seeing you on the next episode. Bye, everybody.
So much for listening. If you enjoyed this episode, be sure to subscribe and leave a review. Each honest review helps me spiral up so that I can serve you even better. Whether you're feeling a lack of impact, income, or time freedom, or perhaps you're just ready for massive momentum in your business, let's chat. Apply for a breakthrough call so that you can gain clarity, identify what's holding you back, and make a plan to spiral up. Head on over to im-lifebydesign.com/breakthrough or access the link in the show notes. For immediate support, log into our community, the Better Club. We focus on inspiration, tactical guidance, and support. This is a community that wants to be better, do better, and have better in life and in business, and we're going to help you do the same. Let's spiral up, friends.